Papers from around the world with Belle Lupton with her pick of the day stories. Hi there, Belle.
Hi there.
You're going to start us off in Burma with a Burmese newspaper. We don't often get those on the press review. This is, though, because there's going to be quite a historic election on Sunday.
There is. It's the general election, and the Myanmar Times, the state-owned Myanmar Times, is at pains to promote the polls' democratic credentials. So they say here, more on the front page, more than 10,000 international and domestic observers, journalists and diplomats have registered to monitor the vote. Of course, a marked contrast from 2010 when only embassy staffers were able to send observers. But, still staying in the region, the Thai paper The Nation says we shouldn't expect too much in democratic terms from a country that has faltered at the very cusp of democratic reforms. So the paper says, yes, it may be 25 years since we've had the two major parties being able to face off against each other in an election. So that's the military-backed USDP and Aung San Suu Kyi's NLD. But the constitution ensures that representatives of the armed forces will retain at least a quarter of parliamentary seats regardless of this election's outcome, which obviously paints quite a depressing picture of what happens after these elections, even if Aung San Suu Kyi's party does win. So the constitution also bars Aung San Suu Kyi from becoming president because members of her immediate family are apparently foreigners. Now, that's an issue because no one else in her party is seen as qualified for the presidency. So the question there is, what happens if they do win?
So she's not allowed to stand, and there are thousands of people in Burma who are not allowed to vote. Very controversial.
Yes, that's true. And the French paper here, Le Figaro, picks up on that story and focuses on the difference, essentially. So obviously we've got the Muslim minorities who find it incredibly hard to vote. 90% of Burma's population is Buddhist. And this Le Figaro piece differentiates between the democratic Buddhists who are in Suu Kyi's party and what they call Buddha's madmen who support the military USDP. Now, one of these madmen is pictured here in the centre. He's called Ashin Wiratu, and he's been dubbed the Buddhist Bin Laden. He rejects Suu Kyi's party because he says she would pass laws recognising the rights of the Rohingya Muslims and would imprison those who torture them. That would be unacceptable to him. Obviously, really strong words there, essentially saying absolutely no way that these Rohingya Muslims can have equal rights to the Buddhists. Suu Kyi is said to be, and this article is said to be so fearful of being branded as anti-patriotic or non-patriotic by the Buddhists that her party presented just one Muslim candidate in this election. Now, a Muslim candidate who would have stood, had he been able to, is given a voice in the New York Times. He's called U Shui Mung, and he's a Rohingya and a current member of parliament. Now, he wanted to run for re-election, but when he went to do so, he was told he was not eligible because his parents were not Burmese citizens when he was born, something that he refutes and says is not correct. Now, he details how the Rohingyas in the Rakhine state cannot move freely from their villages. They have to get permission to marry, and they're not allowed to have more than 2 children. He says governments around the world must resist the temptation of endorsing this election because religious extremists are driving a nationalist agenda, abusing Buddhism to spread xenophobia.
A lot to look ahead to this weekend with that vote, like you say. OK, let's move on to a story from here in Europe. The Catholic Church, a scandal there. 2 employees at the Vatican were arrested at the weekend. What's this all about?
Well, I mean, could this be VatiLeaks Part 2, essentially? We've got the Daily Beast here who talks about 33-year-old Francesca Immacolata Chauki, who is accused, along with her sponsor, Spanish Monsignor Baldi, of leaking documents to the press. It's a story we've heard before. It was what essentially some people say brought Pope Benedict down at the end. Now, the Daily Beast puts forward the theory that this is all down to an anti-Francis cabal who planted this sexy spy in the Vatican. The Daily Beast calls her a steamy babe who once posed topless, which is true. There are topless photos of her out there. And they say she's aligned with the ultra-conservative Opus Dei, which doesn't quite fit with her topless image. But anyway, and of course, Opus Dei does not see eye to eye with Francis's Jesuit order. Now, the pair who have been arrested were both members of a commission that was set up by Francis to advise him on economic and bureaucratic reforms in the Curia. And the arrest took place just 2 days before 2 Italian authors are due to release books in which they say they're going to reveal new scandals and alleged conspiracies by the old guard to undermine some of Francis's reforms in the Vatican. Now, the Daily Beast says that this could be a preemptive arrest rather than a reactive arrest, because they don't know yet what's going to come out in these books. But given that Francesca has been releasing some of this information, they just want to be on the safe side.
Certainly very worrying for officials at the Vatican. There's more intrigue in the UK. This is revolving around the Prime Minister. Now, he's not said to have done anything illegal, but a photograph of him that's been photoshopped has appeared online. People don't like that kind of thing, do they?
No, they hate that kind of thing. You'd almost think it was illegal by the Twitter storm that erupted after this. This here, The Guardian picks it up, and it's a picture. You can see the before and after, in which Downing Street appears to have photoshopped the Prime Minister's photo and put a poppy onto his suit. Poppies, of course, very important. Remembrance Sunday is this Sunday, and they're worn in remembrance of those who were killed in both World Wars. Now, Twitter users picked it up. They called it Poppygate. There were a few. We'll just run through a few of the pictures that came up afterwards. This after he was now the correct image, which they took an hour later.
He's actually wearing a poppy there.
This is the real poppy, which was taken an hour after they corrected it very, very quickly, but not before the Twitter storm had erupted.
OK, our viewers can have a look at that for themselves. Some quite inventive photoshopping going on by Twitter users. Thanks so much for that peek at all that. Belle Lupton